Hello, lovely people, and welcome to Conscious Conversion. I have an old friend with me today. She's not old, actually, but I've known her for much longer than I think almost anyone else I've talked to on the podcast. So that's fun. And I will introduce her soon. But just in case this is your first time listening, Conscious Conversion is a weekly podcast about how we bridge the gap between business and spirit, money and meaning, technology and regeneration in a wildly changing world. In a time of so much polarity and uncertainty, this podcast explores how together we are connecting across the planet, across our differences, and across dimensions as we build the new earth together. And I am your host, Sarah Yamtich. I am delighted to introduce you to the enchanting Charlie Watts. She's an artist, a doula, an aura reader, that's how I know her, and an occupational therapist based in Atlanta, Georgia. That's where I knew her. Her company, Aura Weaver, has served thousands of people through the use of aura photography, energy healing, and sound meditations. She's currently a doctoral candidate at Georgia State University, where she is working towards her career of being a pelvic floor therapist and disability advocate. Charlie, you beautiful, beautiful priestess sister, welcome to Conscious Conversion. And thank you so much. This is the first time we've seen each other in years.
I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so glad to see your face.
Aww. Well, I'm excited to see your face too. I don't know how long ago it was. Actually, I wonder if I can look at my Instagram post. I just pulled it up. When Charlie took a picture of Indy, my 7-year-old son, and me with her aura photography camera. That was, yeah, it was May 2019. So just a few
Oh,
months
wow.
before we moved to Costa Rica. We moved here in August 2019. And my aura is exactly the shade of my favorite color with like this seafoam greens, blues, deep green, emerald greens, and whites. So I was pleased that the aesthetic of my aura matched the aesthetic that I most love.
And that makes like a lot of sense, like knowing you, like those colors, because like the green is such like the heart centered, and then white is like the illumination color. So it's when we operate in those greens and those whites, it's very much like heart open, ready to receive.
Well, yeah, good. Keep on coming. What about the blue? What is the blue? I forget.
So blue is the throat. We'll be using a
Okay,
lot of
yeah,
blue energy right now because it's all about communication. So
right.
blue is it's the self-expression color essentially. It's one of the colors I have to work the hardest on because it's the blue is very direct. Blue is like very much like this is what I need.
All right. So heart-centered, illuminating communication. That's what I'm all about. It really is. It's wild. Um, anyway, what's your aura color these days?
So it's a bit all over the place. It's interesting with with one of the questions I get all the time from clients is, does the aura change? And it's really interesting having worked with so many people continuously now that it's some people are just constantly changing and some people are very steadfast in what their colors are. So I'm the type of person who's usually a bit all over the place, like a bit but at the moment I'm in a bit of a recovery period. I just got through a really tough semester. I in terms of like my clinical practice, like I'm all for like hands-on working with people, but I'm not a researcher. So when we have to do all these like meta-analysis work, I'm a little burnt out. So like when we're really burnt out, we tend to operate more in that red color just because it's red is that root chakra. So it's very grounding. It's when we're really stressed, we can tend to want to leave our bodies. And red's like, ha ha ha, no, we're gonna stay super present. We're gonna stay in the body, and we're gonna like actually like deal with what we need to deal with. So I would imagine there's a decent amount of red in my aura right now.
I bet there's a lot of red in a lot of people's auras right now.
It is like, yeah, and it's funny, red is such a beautiful, it's a polarizing color because
Yeah.
people can, some to some it's passion, to some it's hate. For me, red is kind of like the weighted blanket of aura colors, just because it's the one that connects us directly to Mama Earth. So it's a really grounding color, but we need to use a lot of red to exist. I feel, especially right now with things shifting so quickly.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we could go really deep into that, into the different colors of the aura, but I want to first just ask you, um, right now on on the planet, as you are currently incarnated in this time and space, what's your soul's purpose?
Oof. Um, oh, and I like knew this question was coming. So I really the work I've been doing recently and being especially what's going on within, with Roe v. Wade being about to maybe be overturned, and having been born in Georgia, and have spent like a lot of my life in Georgia. I really think my soul's purpose is to make having children in the South safe.
Mm,
So through my work as a doula, I, just encountered in, so let me like take a step back. So I have been fortunate enough to like kind of live all over. But, when we look at healthcare in California compared to Georgia, it's almost like we're two different countries. And it's one of those with the mother and child mortality rates in Georgia, they are drastically different than they would be in California. So I think a lot of the work I've been doing, within my doctorate work and then within like the doula work, is to really raise awareness and how can we make it safe, um, for people to have children.
wow, that's a really beautiful, beautiful purpose and so different than a lot of the answers I get. So thank you. Um, Yeah, we were talking before I hit record, and I also noticed it on your Instagram profile that you've added this occupational therapist to to what it is that you offer the world since I last saw you. Because when I saw you, you photographer, gorgeously skilled photographer, and are a photographer, and just witchy priestess philosopher type, which I love. And then you've added this other piece that is so much more what like rooted in the traditional mainstream world.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was just, yeah, evidence-based practice. So, mhm.
Yeah. Evidence-based practice, which is not the world of RF photography.
Yeah, it's been a big shift. It's been really beautiful. Yeah, we were kind of talking beforehand. I was trying to figure out how to be a little more. Uh, how do I explain this? I was gonna try to. I think I'd been trying to do a lot of like healing work by like sneaking in through the back door, and I was like, oh, why not just like try to make the systems that are like already in place like work with the work I'm doing. And I looked at the medical field, and like a lot of my family's medical, like my dad's a doctor, my stepmom's a physician's assistant, and we have nurses in the family too. So I was looking across the medical field, and I came across occupational therapy actually through yoga. And it was like the closest to witchcraft. So I was like, this is the field for me.
I love that. What are some of the similarities between occupational therapy and witchcraft?
It's really unique to each patient. It's you with each person that you're kind of encountering, you're really sensing into like what that individual needs. So, and like with occupational therapy, essentially we work with like any type of occupation. It's like I get a lot of like, oh, so you'll help me find a job, and it's like no. It's more like actually working with what occupies your time. So I had kind of hit this dead end as an art teacher. I kept getting put in the classroom with students that they didn't need an art teacher, they needed a therapist. So like also like working in like a lot of Atlanta public schools, there is, again, these huge discrepancies of like what education is provided depending on which zip code you live in, especially in the state of Georgia. And so a lot of the children I was working with needed a lot more support than I knew how to give them. And because it's like, as an artist, you can like support foster in this creativity. And, as an energy worker, I was like keenly aware of like what a lot of these students were feeling, but it was like, how can I take that a step further to support them? So like within a lot of the pediatric work I've been doing, it's been this incredible, just like beautiful integration of being able to bring like art as a therapy and also bring in that therapeutic use of self, and like also just be like with like a lot of with in terms of occupational therapy, I'm not doing direct energy work, but it's definitely informed my practice.
That is amazing. How refreshing to have somebody who knows and practices energy work in an occupational therapy office. I imagine you'll be bringing more of that in one way or another as you go, I would think. And I would imagine also how magical it is to work with children and to bring some of, I mean, like what you have done, what I know of you is very magical. And I mean, the kids are sort of the most receptive to receiving that magical thinking and feeling.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, and it's also I feel with the shift, like with the shutdown with COVID, like a lot of children are going to be needing a lot of support because as humans, like our biggest like strength is our communities, is like being in community with other people, and especially with children being able to like interact with other children. So it's with in terms of OT, I think a lot of that can like OTs are going to be very important in helping like rebuild those communities, just because like with um a lot of the kiddos we're seeing these days with, if they are like sensory sensitive, or if the world is just super overwhelming, like OT has a lot of things in the toolbox to really help with like helping these kids like reach back into those communities.
Wow. Well, thank you for doing that. How do you see your work? And I feel like you've already touched on this, but I just want to explore it more. How do you see your work? I'm going to start with the aura therapy and then move into the occupational therapy, or the aura photography and then move into because that's how I know you. How do you see that sort of contributing to the new paradigm or new earth?
So I feel so lucky that I've been able to do as much work with the aura. So in terms of like the new paradigm, the beautiful thing about aura photography, and it's like I want everyone to always be skeptical and always be like, stand within your own personal beliefs. Like, with aura photography, you can break it down into this like very technical, algorithmic experience. But more of than that, than what I've seen, is that I have witnessed so many clients recognize that we're not just a meat puppet. It's like that we are actually animated. And it might be like a process like with aura work in general, the thing that has been really powerful for me is like being able to actually visualize something past the physical body. And how slowly like science will catch up with that at some point, but how we are not just this one thing. We are not just what our physicality is. We are these like beautiful beaming lights of rainbows that like operate on like many different levels of existence. And I think with aura photography, it has like provided so many people with the opportunity to see that. And I think we as humans, we love to see things like, and it almost to a fault. So even if it feels gimmicky to some, it just gives you the opportunity to imagine like yourself as more expansive than you could have possibly imagined.
And it gives a sensory experience to the whole idea that we have some sort of rainbow light body. And as a Taurus, I love a sensory experience, and I love to see it, to see the thing, to feel it. So that's awesome. Um, and then how does that lend itself to, how do you feel that that lends itself to whatever you're doing in the occupational therapy world? And how do you feel like you're bringing sort of new paradigm ethic to that, that world?
So I feel really lucky to have found OT. One of the things that as I like get older and older, it's like really being able to integrate like different aspects of myself into like one being okay with having these like different aspects of self overlap. It's like I am not just an OT. I'm also like also sorry, Mike, let me get rid of this cat. Like literally trying to rip my door down. Okay, hopefully that will you'll get that. Um like all the banging in the background is
I
like,
didn't even hear it,
oh,
honestly.
okay,
I'm a
okay,
cat
good, okay,
person, so
good.
I'm going to be the first person to totally understand any cat things.
But so okay, back to the question. That is like the fun thing of like moving into Zoom. It's like how it's you're no longer just it's not just not you and like someone in a room talking. It's like all these other variables that can like,
Well, I know. I mean, in Costa Rica, our conversation could end abruptly at any moment. Or a howler monkey could jump right in the tree behind me and start screaming.
but yeah, I think Judah
Anyway.
has sequestered the cat now. So like back to like the original question, I think like one of the things like with the way like aura photography has like informed other aspects of myself is that I've gotten really comfortable with being a multitude of things and it's still being me. Like at the core I believe like I like am an artist, and then like there's all these other things that inform my like art practice. So it's like whether that's the aura photography, whether that's the occupational therapy, it's all just like that creative wave.
Yeah, and you're specializing in pelvic floor work, yeah?
Yeah,
What
so
is it? I know some about that, but I'm curious, like just from your perspective and your words and what you know already, like what is so powerful about work with the pelvic floor?
I think one of the core things like I have noticed with pelvic floor therapy is that it is so few people know about it and so many people need it.
Mm,
um, and it's interesting, it comes back to I think with like a lot of discrepancies of healthcare and specifically in the state of Georgia, where it's like we need more people offering these services for birthing people, or even like with pelvic floor, it can like anyone who has like anyone who uses the bathroom like essentially like can use pelvic floor therapy. But I have found it just being really, it's really powerful to work with just as a modality in general, in that it is something that is so ignored. Like I've had many friends, and like I'm only in my 30s, and so it's within that I've had a lot of friends who have kids who have had their babies and are like having these issues and didn't even know that pelvic floor like therapy was an option for them. And even within like I look at like a lot of like younger folks who with the I feel like I'm just like um talking bad about Georgia's beautiful, I love it here. I'm not leaving. But it's like even like looking back on like the for younger people, like the basics of like sex should never be painful, and there's like a lot of things you can do working with a pelvic floor therapist to work on these things. But like as a younger person, I didn't like there was just so many things I didn't know,
mhm.
um and am now just like, oh, what, sex doesn't have to be painful all the time, like, huh?
Yeah. I mean, Georgia, yeah, it's the beauty. Georgia is absolutely beautiful, and Atlanta is this gorgeous city, or at least I remember it gorgeously. Um, like lush and green and really good cultures. I totally met many of my witchy priestess sisters in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's a really rich place, and the politics and the institutions in Georgia are pretty problematic.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So
um, I mean, and it sounds like this with a lot of the work that you're doing with pelvic floor. I mean, that's like I like to make connections between things, and I'm sure you're doing it all the time. But I really like the integration of things, and I think about the you were talking about the sort of the reds, right? The reds and the oranges, and I imagine that you're working a lot with the red and the orange when you're working on pelvic floor therapy with women.
absolutely. And it's one of those with orange. Orange is such a wonderful color because so orange is that like sacral chakra energy. It's the creative energy. Because if we think about it, it's like literally where our sex organs are located. So it's the both like figurative and literal place of birth. So it's this like orange is just really like a luscious color to work with because it's kind of almost like the source of all creativity.
Do you see yourself being able to integrate sort of chakra work and color therapy and auric color therapy? I don't know what to call it, into your work with clients once you, I mean, maybe you already are. Is that, but is that, do you see yourself able to weave that in or a weaver?
Yeah, it's all weaving. It's all weaving all the time. Yeah, and it's one of those, yeah, it's one of those things like I have struggled with for like a long time, with like how do we talk about spirit but also keep it ethical. And so, for a long time I was practicing, herbal medicine was the plan, but I just like witnessed too much, I just like witnessed too many ethical boundaries being, crossed from my point of view. So it was wanting to like have a little bit more structure. And it's an interesting thing because I think, like, as an energy worker, I feel very grateful. A lot of a couple of my friends are surgeons, and I was actually able to do their Reiki attunements. And I don't think they necessarily will ever use Reiki directly as as a modality, but I do think that they now have an awareness that other surgeons might not have. So I think that energy work will always be present. I think it does kind of feel, I do kind of feel divided of, even as someone who has worked as a witch for so long and out in the public, like I still hesitate to like directly tell that to clients who are not, who I don't haven't like developed a relationship with. So it is still that, it's that interesting. And I think a lot of like with a lot of the work you talk about with like the new paradigm is like being able to be these mystical priestesses like in the public, like being able to work with the goddess like within like the public realm, but it still does feel separated.
Yeah, I love what you just brought up though, because there's ways in which you have to now be a covert witch, which is fun. That's a fun mission. I'm not mad at that. But and I could see that's a transition moment, right? That's a transition moment to maybe, hopefully, please, someday being able to be sort of an overt, openly witchy priestess of the occupational therapy realms. I mean, but seriously, like I think that it's the medicine women and the women who did have that inclination, who were considered witches often, for better and for much worse. Um, and I'd like to think that with the sort of a rise of, a reemergence of the divine feminine and of the goddess, that will become more and more increasingly integrated into the mainstream.
Yeah, it's even within my lifetime, like my very short lifetime, I've seen this really wonderful transition of people really, it's like stepping into their truths in different ways. And it's been so fun doing the aura work to see all the baby witches come through. It's been such a like a joy. Um, just because, when I was practicing as like a young, like, preteen, it could feel very isolating at times. And like,
Mm.
wow, like, at the core, it's just like, I mean, it's, we're constantly aware of like the elementals and the seasons. So it's the older I get, like, just I feel like I'm just getting more and more of the language to use of what I was already doing.
Mm. Hmm. It is very interesting because I look back on my life now and see all the ways, because I wasn't overtly witchy, growing up. I was fascinated by it. It's like I was obsessed with ancient pyramids and cultures all over the world. I majored in cultural anthropology. I was really into the Mayans and what happened to the Mayans, and read Celestine prophecy. And I was like, there's some mystery. I don't understand what it is. And then now I look, and then I majored in anthropology and women's studies. And what I didn't understand was that I was like wanting to discover the priestess, the ancient and futuristic priestess. And it's really fun looking back on life and seeing how my subconscious was putting together all the pieces for myself to help me sort of remember myself back to who I am and who I have been. So I like hearing stories of like witchy adolescents operating in a little bit of a vacuum in Georgia.
They're out there. Oh,
Yeah,
if you were one of them listening right now, no, it gets easier.
you're not alone.
You're not alone.
And I feel like many of us are kind of, as we get older, we find our little packs, our little covens. And it doesn't even have to be the same. Like I have not that we call it a coven, but I have my sisters in Atlanta, Georgia that I absolutely love. I have my sisters here in Puerto Viejo on the other side of Costa Rica, where I just lived for the last 6 months. I'm about to go to Maui, where I'm sure I'm going to bring. It's the same, it's the same soul family all over the world.
Mhm.
And I find that it attracts to me quickly no matter where I'm at, which is super cool. So just if y'all are listening, just keep on witching it up, and you'll bring your people in.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of the house I grew up in. I'm wondering if the people who live there now have like there's definitely crystals and bones buried all over that yard. Oh.
It reminds me of a dear friend I'm going to shout out right now, Alexandra Hughes, Alex Hughes. She's got a podcast that I'd love to refer you to called Witch Hunt. And she's looking for, to interview and looking for all of the modern day witches, in their everyday lives and sort of bringing them into the forefront. It's a really clever podcast, and she just launched her second season. Anyway, I'll hook y'all up if you're interested. I
I
think
would
you'd
love
be an
to.
awesome guest.
I did. It reminds me of it's. I think like a lot of with that kind of like with the idea of like witch hunt is like even when I hear that I still like kind of tense up. Just even those words. And I had a really interesting experience with one of the energy workers I work with. She is this Appalachia woman who is, how do I explain it? She's just next level, like Asheville type. But it was when one of our sessions, I have like pretty chronic back pain. And during one of our sessions, I was like, oh, I almost feel like wings are trying to burst out of my back. And she like leaned in and she was like, oh no, honey, you were stabbed to death in a previous life. So I
You're
think
like, I
there's,
like the wing story better. Thank you. I'm gonna connect with that one.
it's like, oh, not the being killed for a witch. Yeah, yeah. I'm going to stick with the wings too. But
Yeah. Maybe it's both but let's focus on the wing. Moving along. Yeah, I mean, there's so much trauma that we've had to transmute, and we're doing it. And we're doing it together. And so, and thank you, I think, to a lot of the work that you do. I mean, I think the work that you're doing is a huge contribution to transmuting that trauma. Pelvic floor work. I mean, that's super, super magical, epic work, from what I understand. Can be really transformative for people physically and spiritually. Um, can you tell me more about how people can get to know you better and learn more about what you do, who you are, what you offer?
absolutely. So I am the company I'm a part of. We're called the Aura Weaver, and we have locations in Atlanta and Denver. So that's like more of like the traditional, like if you're curious about like ever just getting like an aura photo, I'm super excited to, we are launching actually just like in a week, the Aura Weaver Magic Mystery School. So I'm very,
Tell us more. We need to know
yeah,
more.
I'm so excited about this because at this point, I think I'm super grateful. I think we photographed over 8,000 people at this point. Um, but like a lot of people are now like, now what? So like I have this aura photo, like what do I do with this information? So with with our mystery school that we're starting, we're doing a lot of courseworks on like how to like understand what your aura is and how you can work with your aura for like creative manifestation, or just there's a lot of ways of getting to know yourself more deeply through understanding your auric field. And and through extension, understanding other people's auric fields too. Like I think that's one of the things I have been able to keenly tune into is like being able to really tap into what someone's experiencing through seeing their auras. And it's like with, within aura work, not everyone is going to be able to see auras just because that's, the nature of humans. We're given our certain gifts. But through the Aura Weaver Magic Mystery School, we're going to deep dive into how to really read other auras, how to read your own aura, and then how to like work with those through color magic to really get some witchy magic going.
Dude, that sounds so good. And do you need to have your aura photographed? Do you need to have that technology in order to participate in this? Or is this like
No.
you're gonna like get into the intuitive piece of it?
Yeah, so no, you don't have to have had your aura photographed at all. And it's one of those, we'll actually, like with a lot of the courses that are going to be in the school, you'll be able to like read your own separate from the camera. So it's one of those things, like with aura photography, there's two types of color that operate within the aura. You have your mood colors and you have your soul colors. So with an aura photo, you're looking at the mood colors. Because if we think about energy, like, if you stub your toe, like how you can go from having a great day to like having a terrible day just like that quickly, or like, you get a text message from like the wrong person and how that can wreck your day. And so we're operating in a lot of these different colors, because like if you think about it, being human, we need to constantly be like, working with our hearts, then working with our minds, then grounding. So we're moving through a lot of these colors, but we actually kind of like, with like astrology, how you're born with certain signs, you're also born with certain soul colors. And when you can tap into what those soul colors are, it just can really help you understand yourself a little bit better, which I think is, I mean, what I'm constantly trying to do.
Do you know your soul colors?
And yes, and it might be shocking. So orange is one of my really powerful colors. Is so like with that creative piece, like I just can't escape the creativity and like, with like the pelvic floor practice being, that's very, very orange, and just being an artist, that's very, very orange. So there's, within the different colors too, there's also within like the actual like hues of orange, there's one that's a little bit more brown and red, like the burnt siennas. So there's kind of almost like this, like more like the Georgia clay color is that kind of comes through, like that reddish orange is like very much a color that operates in my aura very frequently as well, and
I
is like
love
one of
that
my
color.
nice, yeah.
That color goes really nicely with my color. I don't know if this is my soul color, but I want it to be. It's this seafoam green color that I wear all the time.
Yeah.
Um, that must be some sort of, yeah, it's some combination of throat and heart and illumination.
Well, I think like even just like with the you say, like I think we override our gut reactions to things so many times, where if it's like within like aura photography, one of the things I tell people is like our relationships to colors are very different. So if what I'm saying is not resonating, but like for example, if you grew up with like a magnolia tree in your front yard, you're going to have a very different relationship with like that creamy white color than like someone else. Someone else might be like, oh, that's a little like hospital clinical.
Yeah, it's too beige or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
too beige. Yeah. As opposed to like for someone else, it could be like that's what family is. Like that's the
Oh,
smell
yeah.
and color of family. So
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. Um, yeah. So much there. I'm really excited about the course. How can people learn more about the course? I imagine they can follow you on Instagram at the Aura Weaver.
yeah, so we're the Aura Weaver on Instagram, and then auraweaver.com is where all that information will be.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. And do you have anything else you want to like? Is there any other pieces of I don't know, wisdom or advice you have for our listeners before we fare thee well to them?
I just like want everyone to know that we're all beautiful rainbows. We all have auras. A question I also get all the time is like, what if my aura doesn't exist? And just like know that that's not what's happening. It's like we're each very illuminated and animated.
Oh, I'm extending it for just a minute for a story that many of my friends have heard 1,000 times. But when Indy was 3 years old, we were in the bathtub and we had just gotten back from a trip to Costa Rica. It was before we'd moved here, and he said all the dinosaurs are dead. mommy. And I said, and we'd never talked about death, like other than like try not to kill the bugs, put them outside, sort of thing. Um, I didn't ever get into like why or what happens or, and he, I said, he said, what's dead in Spanish? And I said, muerto. And he said, all the dinosaurs are muerto. And then I just quickly had this intuitive hit to be like, what happens when we die, Indy? And he goes, our bodies get killed and we turn to light and change colors.
Oh,
So he was like tapped into our rainbow body at the age
oh,
of 3. I asked him, how do you know that? And he just kept talking about his dinosaur toys. So um, I know it's true that we all are magical rainbows. Each and every one of us has our own distinct um, flavor of rainbow colors.
I love that. Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, direct transmission.
I know. It's so fun having a kid sometimes. I mean, all the time. It's so fun all the time to have a kid, at least mine. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for listening and for spending some time with dear Charlie Watts and me. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of the day and that it is filled with rainbows. Check y'all later.